Yo, I'm Bob. Into Star Wars, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about episode 4 of Ahsoka on Disney Plus. Spoilers abound. So watch the episode unless you really want to get spoiled. However, if you're into spoiler-filled recap slash reviews, then watch the video. You do you. That being said, jumping right in, and you were warned. Part 4 is called Fallen Jedi. I like the opening scene of the episode. We get a quiet moment, a kind of deep breath before the plunge, to quote a certain wizard from another trilogy. We get Ahsoka and Sabine, and Ahsoka's a bit worried about Sabine. She's concerned as to whether or not Sabine has what it takes to make a very difficult decision and shatter the star map, if it comes to that. Ahsoka's worried that Sabine is going to choose Ezra over the entire galaxy and unleash Thrawn, start another war. I have to say, if I was in that situation, if I hadn't seen a family member in quite a long time, I don't know what choice I would make. Think about it. I mean, Sabine had spent years with Ezra. If you've watched Rebels, you know what a family dynamic that group had, that crew of the Ghost had. And this is obviously a very difficult choice that Sabine is going to have to make. If you've ever lost someone very close to you, and if you were given the choice to see them again, it would probably be a very difficult choice to make. And yes, I think if Sabine were to choose Ezra over the entire galaxy, it is a selfish decision, but at the same time, she has lost so much by this point. And we find out more about that later in the episode. We find out a bit more pertaining to why Ahsoka and Sabine had split up. So Sabine is having to wrestle with this, and Ahsoka's very concerned about her. At the same time, we get to see Baylan, Shin, and Morgan, and they're at the hinge. They have to begin calculations. The guideline has to be spun up. The calculations have to take time to be made. It reminds me of the internet taking time to buffer in 1999 when I was attempting to watch the episode 1 main trailer for the first time. You know, that they have to distract Sabine, Ahsoka, and Huyang so the calculations can be made in order for them to jump to that other galaxy. So they're going to have to send the guards into the jungle, and the guards have already pinpointed the Jedi shuttle. So we've got several guards hiding in the trees. They're really cool, I would imagine. According to the audio description track, they're masked. They have double-barreled blaster rifles. And I would very much like action figures of these guards. But that is a video for another day. We don't get to see much of Hera in this episode, but we do get to see a bit more of Home One, and we get to see Hera not really in the mood to play politics at all in this episode. She just takes Jason, takes Chopper, she boards the Ghost, and she decides to go to Cetos and aid Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang. And her lieutenant, I feel kind of bad for this guy. I'm not sure how many times he's had to think of something, according to Hera. I don't know if this is the first time he's had to do this or what, but he is not liking the situation that he's in. And when she says, "Well, I'm going," so you just think of something to tell the Senate, she just kind of leaves, and it's like, think of something. What the heck am I going to do? I can imagine he's not really wanting to go in there and have to be in the spotlight, but this is, of course, exactly what I imagine what happens to this guy as Hera takes Jason and Chopper, and they board the Ghost and leave for Cetos. So Ahsoka and Sabine are going to attempt to find the hinge, or the ground base as they call it. They need to get the star map back. But before they do that, I like the scene where the HK droid, he sneaks up. He puts a hand over Huyang's mouth as Huyang is attempting to repair the shuttle. And Huyang starts calling for help, help. help, help. There was this one arcade machine when I was visiting one arcade or another with a friend, and he bumps into it at one point. And when Hu Yang starts doing his help call, it reminded me of the arcade when its alarm went off. My friend had no intention of bumping into the machine. His name was Hunter, by the way, my friend. And I'm thinking of the Bad Batch now. But yeah, when he smacked into the arcade, it started making noises very similar to David Tennant here as Hu Yang calling for help. It was just constant, and it had this blaring alarm in the background. I definitely thought of the old arcade funsies that my friend had. Then he started kicking it because he wanted it to do it again. He liked the help sound effect that would go off there. And I couldn't help thinking of that when Hu Yang was calling for help. But it was no contest. We get to see Sabine and Ahsoka. They make very short work of the guards and the HK droid. Hu Yang even manages to use his additional arms to do some punching. He gets the droid off of him. I like how the fight finishes up. We have Sabine utilizing her Mandalorian weaponry. And she ensnares that last guard, and Ahsoka finishes this particular guard off. So it was a really brief but brutal fight scene there. Before Ahsoka and Sabine leave for the Hinge, I like the bit of advice Hu Yang leaves them with. Stay together. You always worked better together. Something along those lines. So they do head out. And then we get to see them making their way toward the Hinge, but of course, Baylan has sent Marok and Shin to delay them because those calculations have to be made so they can jump into the other galaxies. So the rogue Jedi, the false Jedi, as the audio description track calls them, that's exactly what they do. We get a lot of lightsaber action in this episode, and I absolutely love the audio description track. I would have been quite lost without it because we get Shin versus Sabine, and Sabine is having to utilize her Mandalorian weaponry as well as Ezra's lightsaber. She's kind of taking the best from both worlds and doing her best, but Shin is a very fierce opponent, and Shin's very arrogant as well. And I like how Sabine she's faring reasonably well, but at the same time, this is a very difficult challenge for her. Shin force pushes her at one point, and she loses her pistols. She loses her helmet. That force push was so fierce that she loses a bit of weaponry as well as her helmet, and then she has to rely on her lightsaber as she's fending Shin off. I mean, Shin's cutting down trees, and Sabine is having to do her best to dodge and block and slash. At the same time, Ahsoka and Marok, I love this brief duel, and it is very brief. She's kind of smiling at this guy as they're fighting, and he spams the same whirly-do lightsaber move that all the Inquisitors have done in the past. She just kind of stands there and lets him do it for a second, and she just sidesteps, and she stops the blades and slashes him right through his armor, and then he springs a leak, and I like the vapor that pours out from him. I don't know what this guy is. I think it might have something to do with Night Sister magic. I know a lot of fans thought the same thing. When I watched it for the first time, one of the individuals I watched it with was so excited during the duel that I didn't quite hear about the scene with the vapor pouring out of the armor. So on my second rewatch, I got that the very next morning, the morning after the premiere. And I really loved that scene. I'm kind of glad Marok didn't turn out to be Ezra. He's just I'm not sure what he is. I like to imagine some kind of undead thing in that armor. A soul of a fallen Jedi, a wraith, if you will. Now, spoilers ahead for the Shadow of the Sith novel. If you haven't read that yet, I would advise you to possibly do that. But if you haven't read it and don't really mind, then that's fine too. In Shadow of the Sith, chapters 12 and 13, Luke is attempting to find the lost world of Exegol. This is set 13 years before The Force Awakens. And he journeys there via the Force. And he has to deal with 9 wraiths. They're rather shadowy, and he cannot touch them with the Force. We have Anakin Skywalker's Force Ghost showing up, and he actually whisks Luke away from there. I also thought of, yeah, like I said, these wraiths from those particular chapters of Shadow of the Sith. Now, these are Sith cultists, of course. I don't know if they might have something to do with what we've seen here in the latest episode of Ahsoka. This is probably more of a Night Sister construct, but I couldn't help thinking of the Wraith-like cultists from the Shadow of the Sith novel. We also saw them in Rise of Skywalker. They weren't vaporous or anything like that. We do know that the undead Night Sisters had this green mist a part of them as well whenever they would be struck down. Whenever Savage Press was dispensed with by Sidious in the Clone Wars, we got to see that mist pouring out of him as he expired in the Clone Wars Season 5. I would imagine this is some sort of Night Sister construct, and I really wish we could get a backstory here regarding Marok. I know he's probably just kind of a jobber character. He didn't really get much to do, but I really did like that brief but brutal duel here. Ahsoka just takes him out like he's nothing. She's had this spam attack done against her more than once, and she just sidesteps him and dispenses with him just like that. So you get this look from Shin after Marok has been, I would imagine, defeated for the final time. Who knows? Mother Talzin was able to survive being just vapor. I would imagine Marok's gone, but she gives this look of surprise. Ahsoka's got to run off and head to the Hinge and deal with Baylan. So Sabine and Shin are still dueling, and it is a very awesome lightsaber duel. But I mean, Sabine is not having an easy time with it. She still manages to hold her own, I would say, pretty well. But all the while, Shin is taunting her, telling her, well, you've got no power. And Sabine is still doing her best to withstand Shin's onslaught here. So as Shin is taunting Sabine, I like how Sabine uses that to her advantage. Shin is underestimating Sabine, but she's using her Mandalorian weaponry to gain an upper hand in the fight. She disarms Shin with that dart from her gauntlet there. So it was an interesting way to finish the fight for now. I would imagine we're going to be seeing these two going at it again before Ahsoka is over and done with. About Baylan before he duels with Ahsoka, I like how he's not necessarily wanting to duel. He is actually attempting to reason with her. He really doesn't seem to want to end more Jedi lives. I mean, they've all been through so much since Order 66. And from what Baylan says about Anakin leaving a legacy of death and destruction, I get the sense that he might not have been a Vader fanboy. I wonder if he was an Inquisitor at all. I'm gonna go with no for the time being. I wonder if he was doing his own thing after Order 66. Yes, probably using the dark side to get what he needed, but he certainly doesn't seem to have approved of Vader's methods. And of course we do get a fantastic lightsaber duel there with Ahsoka and Baylan, and it's one of my favorites. I like how right before it ends, he actually says, well, I wish it hadn't come to this, but no other way. He really wants to preserve her life, but I mean, he's got to do what he's got to do. And of course, I don't think he's in the right here. He feels as if he needs to destroy in order to create. So he's one of those antagonists who feels that he's in the right. He's willing to visit destruction and death upon the galaxy in order to create something new. That's just fine, though. He's totally different from Vader. I understand why he feels the way that he does, though. You get the sense that he's a very weary soul, and he's probably seen a lot. I wish we could get backstory regarding Baylan at some point. Hopefully not just in a comic book. Otherwise, well, I'm screwed. And they are so close to destroying the map. But, of course, Baylan strikes Ahsoka. She goes over the cliff. We've had so many Ahsoka death fake-outs by now. I mean, the series is called Ahsoka, so yeah, she's going to be fine. I don't think we're going to see her kick the bucket until much later on. Baylan actually reasons with Sabine, and we find out as Sabine is holding the map there, she does manage to get the map after Ahsoka manages to wrest it from the pedestal there. You know, he lets Sabine know, hey, I know you want to see your friend again. I want to make that happen for you. And she's actually listening to him. He does seem to be exercising compassion, and I don't necessarily think he's being deceptive. He is really attempting to reason with her. He doesn't want to see anybody else get hurt. And yeah, he actually convinces her to give him the map so she can see her friend again. And, you know, we find out that, oh, that's fun. Sorry, that was my dentist confirming my appointment for Saturday. So that's what you heard, this annoying little thing ringing here. But yeah, as the episode draws to a close, we find out that Sabine has lost her family. They died on Mandalore. That's the reason why, as far as we know at present time, that Ahsoka and Sabine had a parting of ways. There's probably more to it than that. I wonder how Baylan found that out. He seems to be a very wily, information-gathering rogue Jedi. But yeah, he actually wins the map with reason and I would say a bit of compassion on his part. And I like how, you know, Shin is attempting to force choke Sabine right after they get the map back, but Baylan's like, nah, we're going to keep our word. I told her no harm is going to come to her, and I meant it. You need to let her go. And that's exactly what happens. And then we get to see the Eye of Sion jumping to hyperspace. I like Hera showing up in the system, but they lose, I'm not sure how many X-Wings. I think at least 3 or so. Good thing Carson Teva, played by Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, is still around. I'm glad he showed up in the episode. It's always good to see him. And then, of course, there's the end of the episode that drove everybody insane, and in a good way. I kind of wish they hadn't revealed anything. I think they might have released a TV spot with Anakin's voice in it. But when we see Ahsoka entering the Vergence Scatter, or World Between Worlds, we get to see Anakin showing up, and he says, hello, Snips. And it's such a good scene. She is, I would imagine, very overjoyed to see him again. We do get a bit of a Vader theme at the end of the episode. I wonder if they just put that in there so fans will lose their minds even more during reaction videos, being like, oh God, they played the thing, they did the thing, it's the Vader theme. I don't know. Or it might not be Anakin, it could be someone posing as Anakin. I don't know. I'm probably going to say that it is. He does have the glove over his right hand, whereas in Shadow of the Sith, the novelization of the novel there, we don't really see any glove on his hand. I don't know. It probably is Anakin, I would imagine. I hope it is, and hope it's not somebody attempting to mess with Ahsoka's head here. I don't know necessarily who it could be. I think the son, voiced by Sam Witwer in the Clone Wars, is not in that particular place anymore, unless he did survive. That's quite possible as well. If it does turn out to be the son from the Mortis trilogy from the Clone Wars, hey, I'm all for that too. I really hope that it is Anakin, though, because I love getting to see Anakin back as a Force ghost. He feels like he has a lot to do. Spoilers ahead if you haven't read Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. We get this beautiful short story about Anakin and what he's up to after he dies. And he feels like he's got a lot of making up to do, a lot of wrongs that he still needs to right. And I really hope they go somewhere with that he's still around giving people advice, attempting to redeem folks hither and thither in the Star Wars galaxy. Just a really awesome character, and I want to see more of Anakin attempting to patch things up, to mend fences as a Force ghost if you can. I loved seeing him in the Shadow of the Sith novel, and I really hope that it is indeed Anakin here in the Vergent Scatter, or the World Between Worlds. As for what episode 5 is called, I don't know, because it's about a week until we get that. So I guess I'll hear you guys in the next Ahsoka video. Hopefully this hasn't lasted too long. One last thing, when Baylan said witchcraft after Morgan was attempting to get the map to do what it needed to do, I actually attempted to imagine in my head him singing Frank Sinatra's Witchcraft, but he didn't do that. I didn't get an "although I know it's strictly taboo," nothing like that, but maybe we'll get him doing a bit of a witchcraft number before the end of the show. I don't think we will, though. Anywho, till next time, and may the Force be with you.